Evening, everybody. Thanks for your patience and thanks for coming. Only 6 days to go until the world's focus turns its attention to one of the biggest annual sporting events on the planet. Wimbledon is almost upon us, ladies and gentlemen, bringing with it all its tradition, its history, its drama, and above all, its desire. Of course, much excitement in Great Britain because Andy Murray arrives back as the defending champion. That was a great final, but who also could forget, and what a magnificent moment it was in the semi-final between Djokovic and Del Potro. Del Potro had hyperextended his knee. People were expecting him to last no longer than an hour and a half. He took the fourth on a tiebreaker. Djokovic won the match, but it was 4 3/4 hours of the best sporting drama. Yes, it was tennis, but it absolutely encapsulated, I think, just why the championship is so magical and so fantastic, not only to watch, but to work on for those of us who are fortunate enough to spend every fortnight, every summer in Wimbledon. But also, it must be magnificent to coach at Wimbledon, and we'll hear a little bit more in a moment from Tim about what it must be like to play there. Us mere mortals can only begin to imagine. So we're here to talk about the launch of a brand new app, and I think one of the impressive things about Wimbledon, it's a championship steeped in history. Its job is to preserve tradition, but at the same time it has to embrace technology and embrace the future. And in that regard, Wimbledon achieves all of those things. It's not a championship that rests on its laurels. It could do. It could probably get away with no advertising at all in the lead up to the championship, and every seat would still be taken. Every square inch of grass on Henman Hill would still be covered. But the championship is always seeking to improve, and technology is at the heart of the next generation of Wimbledon supporters and spectators. So we will be talking about the app, so please join me in welcoming our three guests up onto the stage. We have Mick Desmond, the commercial director of the All England Lawn Tennis Club. We have Alex Willis, the content manager, and we have Mr. Tim Henman, former world number 4, and so many brilliant semi-finals at Wimbledon. Well, Mick, first of all, if we could start with you, why is Wimbledon so special to you? I mean, obviously, it's a fortnight of hard work, but it can't fail to excite, even even though you've overseen it on so many occasions with so much drama.
Well, I think it's just such a special place because it's an event that transcends sport. I think every year, everybody looks forward to coming to it. It's the attention to detail. I think it is the tradition and the heritage that we have, but also every year we try and surprise. So there's always innovation that we try and bring to the championship. But I think it's the attention to detail that goes into the preparation. And my favourite moment is about 7:30 on the Monday morning before play starts. Going in, it's like going to a dinner party where the table's set, everything's in its place, and it just looks like perfection.
When you are dealing with a championship that is so steeped in history, and you've only got to walk in to SW19 to kind of feel that atmosphere and the names and the prestige, how do you balance moving forward but preserving those great traditions and that great sense of history at the same time?
Well, I think it's like two sides of a coin. I mean, I think you're right. We obviously cherish our brand, and it's about the heritage, the tradition, the attention to detail, the players playing in white, playing on grass. But at the same time, we need to move forward, and I think, certainly we'll talk about today our digital assets, the same attention to detail that we put into preparing the grounds, we try and do with all our digital platforms, so that if you can't be at Wimbledon, and only about 500,000 people physically come through the doors during the championships, for all those people around the world, we want them to share the experience. So we try and make it as immersive as we can, have as much imagery as we can, and we need to keep innovating, but at the same time cherish our brand.
Have you been surprised at the speed with which the technological side of what you offer and what's embedded within the website has taken off?
Yeah, I am. I think it's fair to say that probably sort of 4 or 5 years ago we may well have been following other sports rights holders in terms of what we're doing with our digital strategy, and I think we're now in a very strong position where I think we're now taking a very clear lead. And it was great a couple of weeks ago that we actually had the recognition from our peers where we won the BT sports brand of the year, and a lot of that was because of our digital assets, where we're reaching a much younger audience, but at the same time geographically engaging with just more and more people.
I guess this is a hard question to answer because technology does move so quickly. You've already done so much in the last few years. What's next? Because Wimbledon is always trying to evolve and think one step ahead, which you guys are doing brilliantly at the moment. So what's in the back of your mind, or what's on the blueprint for the future, for next year and the years that follow in terms of your digital strategy?
Well, I think it's building on what we've got. I mean, I think we're now sort of across all platforms. I know Alex will talk in more detail about sort of the social engagement, which is probably the bigger emphasis for this year. I think probably going forward to try and engage more geographically with people. We've already got tweeting into China, into Japan, in language. I think we could extend that more. I think it's a learning curve as well. The great thing about having IBM as a partner is that we get all the information back, so we can have a clear sense of what people want. How are they engaging with us? How do they want us to go forward? So I think we're on a journey. It's a long journey.
Well, Alex, that would seem an appropriate point at which to bring you in. Just first of all, before we talk to you about the strategy, let's have a look at the app, as people have hopefully just downloaded it in the last couple of minutes. Guys, if you can prepare it on the big screen, that would be great. It's really simple to use. There's some fantastic features on there. If you're a stato, you can find what you want. If you're only looking for a quick score update, you can absolutely find what you want. It's a great piece of technology to help you appreciate and absorb the championship, even if, as Mick said, you can't actually be there yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Rob, and thank you everyone for coming. I think what we're most proud of with this app, which hopefully you'll get a sense of, I'll show you a few visuals from it. This is very Blue Peter style coincidence, but it is exactly here. Is Wimbledon is a beautiful place, and we wanted everyone who comes to, whether it's our website, whether it's to our iPad app, whether it's our mobile apps, to feel like they were experiencing what Wimbledon looks like. So this is an app that's very image-based. It allows you to see different views of the grounds throughout the day. You can see what the courts look like, and I'm trying to give everyone a sense of exactly how beautiful it is, but also give it a view that you don't necessarily get from television. It's a bigger place than you might realise, and also the breadth of content that we have that's available. So what we're trying to give users the option to do is streamline the app according to what they're most interested in. So if you were to go into your live scores section, for example, which there's live scores from qualifying going on at the moment, and if you were to hit the favourites only button, although I don't actually have any favourites, so it won't work. But if I did have favourites, it would streamline it so I could just see the players or countries or events that I was most interested in. We've also got results and an array of other content, including Live at Wimbledon, which Rob here works with us on, but also some videos. I'll show you a quick little video clip as I get to it, this is the kind of content we created last year that we're quite proud of, just to show a completely different side to Wimbledon that people might not have seen before. So this is the hill in 24 hours. You'll see the number of people that come and go. It's quite fun.
I think it's one thing that you don't necessarily appreciate until you work on the championship is just the tremendous amount of effort that goes in to actually making it look all so effortless.
Absolutely. I mean, you'll see at the end of this video, it's quite fun. All the people here enjoying their day at Wimbledon, and then everyone comes along to clean up all the rubbish afterwards. And lo and behold, you're back to it being perfect again. So we're really excited about this year and hopefully giving people a sense of what it's like to be at Wimbledon, even though they can't go.
Looking back to the beginning of when apps came into being and the beginning of your digital platform and your strategy, what was your outlook? What were you expecting to do a few years ago? Because judging on the evidence of what we've seen here today, not only have you achieved those goals, you've surpassed them in some style.
I think the first step was as Mick said, with our website. Even though we're seeing more and more people using mobiles, in fact last year over 53% of our traffic on all our digital came from mobiles, the website still remains the hero, as it were. And for most people, when they're at work all day and they're wanting to follow Wimbledon and keep track of Wimbledon, that is our first point of call, and we wanted people to hit the homepage and feel absolutely like it was Wimbledon. There was no confusion. There was not 55,000 messages on it. They didn't know where to look. So that was the start, and I think we were so delighted with the reaction we got from that we've just tried to take that forward.
Let's touch on social media. We're going to be talking to Tim about that in just a few moments' time. But what have we got on there by way of social media for this year's championship?
So there's a new section which I can't actually show you because it won't be live until Monday, but it's called the Social Hill. Come back on the 23rd of June. And the idea is to engage the crowd at Wimbledon on Henman Hill and invite them to let us know how they think the match that is being shown on the hill is going at any time, but then also compare what they think with what the rest of the world thinks. So it's basically encouraging real-time engagement from the virtual to the physical. And I think that's where social media is so interesting, is that you are getting people offering their opinion, but it's using that and getting real insight from that in a useful way.
Great stuff. Well, thanks very much, Alex. Tim, we've been looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Before we get into anything in any great detail, can you still clearly remember your first visit to Wimbledon? Does it sit high in the memory?
Absolutely. I think it was a sort of defining moment in my life. I first went to the championships on the Monday in 1981. And I was 6, and I went with my mum, and we were lucky enough to have 2 tickets on centre court. And being the first day, the defending champion Bjorn Borg was defending his title for the 5th time and going for a 6th title. And I got into centre court, and I remember exactly where I was sitting. And it was a little bit different then. There was standing room in the stadium, but as I was there with my mum, I saw centre court, and I saw the immaculate grass and the umpires and the ball kids out on the court, and Bjorn Borg coming out of the door and walking onto court, and that was where I really made my one and only career decision. I said that, that's what I want to do when I grow up, and I've loved the place ever since.
You obviously competed at a very high level at all the slams, but did you find it a little bit easier to get up for Wimbledon because it had such a key place in your mind from when you were 6?
It was definitely my favourite tournament for obvious reasons, but I think when I was able to step back from that and appreciate the biggest and best tournament in the world was my home tournament, and to have the opportunity of playing so many of my matches on centre court with the most incredible support, it was a real privilege. And now that I don't play anymore, but I'm on the tournament board, and it's been fantastic to see things from the other side of the fence and really appreciate how the club and the tournament has evolved over time, because I think you touched on it earlier. There has been massive change. There's been incredible investment in the infrastructure, in the courts, the facilities for the players, in every area. But the most important aspect, the tradition, which is the ethos of the event, remains the same, and that is so important. I think that for me is what's impressed me most being involved in the tournament.
Because the investment has to continue, doesn't it? There isn't any complacency, and there isn't room for that, because Wimbledon wants to maintain its place. I mean, we can be a little bit biased here because we're British, at the very top of all the Grand Slams.
And we are probably a bit biased sitting here, but the players are our greatest spokespeople. And if you were to go into the locker room and ask the top 100 male players and the top 100 female players, I guarantee you, 90% of them would say if they could win one tournament, they'd like it to be Wimbledon. And that is a fantastic position to be in. But as you quite rightly say, we can't rest on our laurels. And our competitors are the other Grand Slams. They are the cornerstone of our game, and they are fantastic events. And Wimbledon is always looking over its shoulder to see what's happening in New York, to see what's happening in Paris or in Melbourne, the investment to their infrastructure, to make sure that we can understand what they're doing and perhaps learn from different areas, to see different sporting events, the Masters at Augusta, and see how they work with their facilities to keep improving. And it's the same as a tennis player. If you don't keep improving, you'll get left behind. And I think that's the same for Wimbledon as a club and as a tournament, and that's what they do fantastically well.
As a former player, you'll be well aware of how big a role statistics play, certainly for journalists and for fans and for players to some extent. There are loads of stats you can access on the app. Do you think in your playing career, if there'd been an app, would it have been something that you would have looked at, the statistics?
Massively. I mean, we did get a lot of statistics, but not in a format like this, and we would get pages and pages of stats that you sort of had to sift through to look at, first serve percentage or aces or first serve points won, and I think now, because players are so much more accustomed to this type of information, it absolutely will be used by all the players in the event, and I think it's very valuable. You're always looking for those very small gains against the best players in the world, because the difference between winning and losing can be, such small margins, and I'm sure from the professional side, whether you're a player or whether you're working in the media, there's a lot of great information that we can utilize.
Well, you just touched on the media, and I'm guessing that quite a few of your co-commentators live on the BBC would be able to use that app, and actually during, not just before, a broadcast.
Oh, absolutely, and there are, as a fan of the game and a student of the game, there are still times when a player may have come through for qualifying and you don't know a great deal about him or her, and to be able to have access to information about them, their results, and how they've been playing this year, and who they've beaten, it's absolutely invaluable, because there's nothing worse than if you're sitting commentating on a match and you don't really feel like you've got the details of a player in front of you. It makes your life very hard, because you're sort of learning as you go along, whereas you're meant to be educating the spectators, who the fans who are watching on television. So I can guarantee it's going to be used across the board.
I'm really interested to get your thoughts on social media, because we've heard from Alex about the fans on Henman Hill will be able to get involved. But from a professional sportsman's perspective, if social media in the guise that we know it in today had been around when you were a player, would you have been getting involved in tweeting after matches? I mean, a lot of players, it's second nature to them. They are a different generation, but for some, occasionally, it can prove a little bit distracting.
Yeah, it can, and again, this is all about managing your time, and certainly it is a different era, and things have changed so quickly and so dramatically. But it is about, in an individual sport, those players are representing their brand, and it's been proven to be an extremely powerful tool. And you look at Facebook followers or followers on Twitter, and it's enormous, the numbers. And I think, knowing tennis players, there will be a competitive element to that. They have massive competition, professional rivalries, but there will be little sideline action going on to see who's got the most followers, and it's the numbers are increasing all the time.
Before we open it to questions from the floor, and if you are going to pose a question, fantastic, but if we could ask you to wait for a microphone to come to you, that would be appreciated. Again, let's just talk about this year. Of course, you're going to be asked hundreds of questions about Andy Murray, and about the fact that he's now got a new fledgling partnership going with Amelie Mauresmo. What are your instinctive thoughts about that? A lot's been made of it in the media that he likes working with women, that his mum was coaching, big influence. What's your gut instinct?
I think, first and foremost, I was probably as surprised as anyone. I didn't really see the appointment coming, but I really hope that it is a relationship that can flourish, because I think the continuity for Andy is important. I don't think he wants to be chopping and changing coaches and bringing in different people. I was also surprised by the timing of it. I think it's this is Andy's most intense time of the year, obviously playing at home, coming into the grass court season as the defending champion at Queen's and the defending champion at Wimbledon. So there's always an enormous amount of scrutiny. So that will be another challenge. But I think it's also important to remember that he's a phenomenal tennis player, and he knows what he's doing out on the court. He played very well in Roland Garros. So I'd like to see them given a little bit of time to to see how the partnership flourishes, and there's going to be a lot of interested parties looking on.
And just finally, one more question before we go to the floor. Who in the men's and women's draw do you have a really good feeling about this year? I mean, it's often so difficult to predict, and if we could predict, it wouldn't be the great championship it is. But
I try, and when I'm asked that question, I do get asked it quite often, I try and give a different answer every time, because then I'll always be able to go back to one interview and say, well, I told you. On the men's side, I would be very surprised if the winner came from outside the top 4 players, and I put Murray in that group. Djokovic and Nadal, I think, are the favourites going in. Their form this year has been absolutely fantastic, and they've obviously played so well in the biggest tournaments. I definitely would not write off Federer. On a grass court, I still think he can win Wimbledon this year, because grass is the toughest surface for players to defend on. And Djokovic and Nadal and Murray rely on their defensive skills. Federer doesn't really defend because he's so attacking and he's so aggressive, and grass is the surface that helps him the most. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him win. And given Andy's form in the last couple of weeks with Roland Garros, I really believe that he can defend his title now. I think if you'd have asked me that question 6 weeks ago, I wasn't convinced that his back was 100%, but the way that he played in Paris and getting that match play under his belt, getting the running in his legs, I think he's got a great chance.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Tim. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to ask a question, just put your hand up and we'll make sure we get a microphone to you as quickly as possible. Don't be shy. A great opportunity to pose a question to one of the game's greats. Lady at the back there, if we could pass in a microphone. Thanks very much.
Hello, question for Tim. When you played a big Grand Slam match, or any big Grand match, how did you prepare emotionally in terms of relaxing? Did you listen to music? Did you watch films?
That's a good question. Obviously, in tennis, unless you play the first match of the day, you don't know what time you're going to start. And so certainly, if you were following a men's match, is it going to be a 3-set match, a 4-set match, a 5-set match? So I think the question you ask is a very good one, because you have to be in control of your emotions. You've got to be, perhaps ready to go on the court in 15 minutes, or you've got to be able to relax and go on the court in 2 hours and 15 minutes. For me, I was just happy to, be in the locker room with my coach and my trainer, and maybe watch the match that was on before, talk, maybe listen. I didn't listen to a great deal of music, sometimes play cards, sometimes play backgammon, whatever passed the time, but you always had the understanding that you could be on court in 10 or 15 minutes. So you'd never totally switch off and totally relax, but you were able to, and obviously because we compete so much, in some sports, if you're boxing or whatever it is, you don't compete a great deal, but we're probably playing 70 or 80 matches a year, and over your career that can add up to thousands. So you do learn what works best for you, and you become pretty comfortable with that whole process.
Anything else? Chap in the next row along.
What's your favourite Wimbledon moment, Tim? We talk a lot about moments and experience. We've heard a lot about it. What's your favourite Wimbledon moment of all your years there?
Am I only allowed one?
Yes.
I was talking about this the other day in a press interview, and it is very, very difficult to narrow it down to one. But in terms of one match, one moment that might surprise people, might not surprise people, was in 1997. We had some of the worst weather at Wimbledon that any of us had experienced. We didn't have a roof on centre court, and that year was only the second time that we played on the middle Sunday, and I was lucky enough to play, I think it was my third round match It might have been my second round, I can't quite remember, but I played Paul Haarhuis from the Netherlands, and it was People's Sunday, so it was 14,000 people that had queued to get an opportunity on centre court. And I remember when we came through the doors and walked around the back of the canvas, when we came on the court, it was a Mexican wave, which I hadn't experienced as I walked onto court at Wimbledon. And then during the 5-minute knock-up, every shot that I hit was cheered, and every shot that Paul hit was booed, and the atmosphere was, I think, the best atmosphere I ever played in, and I felt that they should be rewarded, so I ended up winning 14-12 in the fifth, just to keep it going. But it was an amazing day. It certainly wasn't the best I ever played at Wimbledon. It wasn't the best player I ever beat at Wimbledon. But in terms of just a moment to savor, and funnily enough, I was asked about reflecting on my career and memorabilia and different things, and I don't really have any, and not on display anyway at my home, and I realized that I only had one picture tennis related at my home, and it's match point against Haarhuis, and it's when I've broken his serve at 13-12, and I hit a forehand passing shot down the line, and I've sort of thrown my arms in the air, and you can see, and it's a great photo because I'm obviously pretty excited, but the crowd behind is just amazing. And when I think of that, it brings back some good memories.
Great stuff. Anybody else? There are some great gems coming out here, so please keep the questions coming. So we got the chap in the back row, and then the guy with the glasses just ahead.
Apologise for the English, I'm Italian. Following the question of the lady, what do you like to do after a match? Either if you win or if
Celebrate.
You lose. both things, because even recovering after like losing a game.
Yeah, it's another good question. What do you like to do after you win? It depends on the round that you're playing in. If you're in a final and you've won a tournament, I think it is important to celebrate. You've got to savor that moment, because in tennis at Wimbledon there'll be 127 losers. There'll be 254 losers, I should say, because there'll only be one person that wins the men's singles and only one lady that wins the women's singles. And so it's important to savor, and even if you're Roger Federer or Maria Sharapova, you lose a lot. And so therefore the reflection of that is you become good at controlling your emotions, that when you win you don't get too excited, especially if you've got to come back and play the next day or a couple of days later. And when you lose, you've got to keep the sense of perspective to say, what did I do? What can I learn from that match? How can I improve my game and make yourself a better player? So I think the good players are able to keep a balance on it. But certainly, I didn't win too many tournaments. I won 11 on the tour, and I always felt it was important to celebrate those.
Hi everybody, a question for Tim again. Tim, how did you know when to stop your career?
That's a good question, and I remember exactly when it was. It was in July in 2007, and I was in Washington, and I played John Isner, who was 6'9", with an incredible serve, and I ended up losing 7-6, 4-6, 7-6, and he served about 35 aces, and I went back to the hotel with my coach. This will answer your question, to have a few beers to drown my sorrows. And I was talking to my coach, Paul Annacone, at the time, and I said to him, I'm not really sure, for the first time ever, I'm not really sure I'm enjoying this. And I started playing tennis when I was 3, and I was 32. I was 32 at that stage. And for that split second, I felt like this was going to become my job, not my hobby. And I remember he looked at me and he said, if you're not enjoying it, you shouldn't do it. And I sort of looked at him in amazement and said, what, you think I should retire? And he said, well, if you don't enjoy it and you don't want to do it, why are you going to do it? And then I immediately thought to myself, I looked at my schedule. I had 2 Masters Series in America. I had the US Open, and then I was playing the Davis Cup at Wimbledon playing for Great Britain against Croatia to qualify for the World Group. And it all made sense. And I was struggling with my back a little bit. My ranking was probably, 30 or 40, and it was probably moving in the wrong direction. My wife was pregnant with our third child, and I thought, this is the right time for me. And I then really enjoyed those last few tournaments. I won both my matches at Davis Cup, and we beat Croatia 3-0 to get back into the World Group. And now I reflect, and I sometimes say that if I knew retirement was going to be this good, I would have stopped 10 years ago.
Okay, probably time just for one or two more. We've seen two hands
There we
shooting
go.
up in the front row there. Let's go for the lady first, and then the chap with the glasses.
Hi, my question's to all of you. What do you think is the greatest ever match that's been played at Wimbledon?
You start that, Mick.
I'm probably showing my age. I think the Borg McEnroe match, which
1980.
Yeah.
Mine would probably be the Federer-Nadal final in 2008. I was very fortunate. It was the first Wimbledon I was working, and I was in the press seats, and all the press had actually left and gone inside to the press centre because they had to meet their deadlines because it got so late. So I managed to sneak on and get a seat, and it was so dark. It was unbelievable how dark it was. So that's mine.
Do you mean apart from the Henman Harhus match?
We can pick one from your career, and then pick one that you didn't participate in.
I think beating Federer on centre court in 2001 was a good moment to look back on. But I would actually agree with Alex. I think the best tennis match I've ever seen was Federer-Nadal in 2008, and that was the first Wimbledon final that I commentated on. So it was a real, sort of honour and a privilege to see that and understand their history, their rivalry, and to see Rafa finally win Wimbledon for the first time when it was virtually dark. It was an incredible match.
Okay, hi. Great to see all of you on stage. Message for both of you. How long did it take for the app to be developed? How many days or weeks?
For this championship? Well, really, I guess it started, Alex would probably be better to talk about it, but it started really in Atlanta with IBM back in October. But I think we had in our mind what we wanted to do after the 2013 championships, because most of the attention for 2013 was the iPad app, and we really wanted to give a greater focus to the mobile app for 2014. But Alex, you might want to comment more on that.
As far as actual development time, we started, as Mick said, we agreed the concept at the end of last year. We started designs in January, and the build started in March. So fairly long time.
Long time. Question for Tim. Who was your idol when you were growing up?
Bjorn Borg was my first, and then Stefan Edberg. And when I was about 16 and I left school to play professional tennis, Stefan was living in London, and he was being coached by Tony Pickard, who was a British, former British player, and then Edberg's coach. And I was lucky enough to practice a lot with him. And for a wide-eyed 16-year-old to get the opportunity of hitting with the world number one, that was a very steep learning curve when you can see firsthand all the areas that you need to improve on. He definitely had a big impact on my professional game and my game style. So those two.
So the lady in the black t-shirt, I think, was waiting for a question next.
Question for Tim. Just wondering where you're going to be watching Wimbledon next week. Is it going to be through the app, or is it going to be in the stadium?
Everywhere. I'll be working for the BBC for the whole 2 weeks, and so we'll have all sorts of different areas. I'll be in the studio with Sue Barker. I'll be commentating on matches, and so I'd quite like to get out to the hill, but it's sometimes a bit tricky.
I think you might be mobbed if you headed up there. Ladies and gentlemen, unless we have any more questions burning a hole in your pocket, as it were. Are you on? Just quickly, if you just wait for the microphone, thank you. And this is the last one. Sorry about that.
I just came to think about the 2001 semi-final between you and Goran Ivanisevic. Do you think if there'd been a roof in place at the time, you might have won?
I don't think I know.
That's still my favourite match.
Yeah, that was a difficult one, but I think people forget they have a slightly selective memory, and there were a lot of occasions when it rained and it helped me when I wasn't playing so well, and certainly in that match. Having just won the third set 6-love, and Goran was not in the best frame of mind, shall we say. The fact that it did rain, we were always going to have a delay, an interruption, even if we did have a roof, because that obviously takes a little bit of time to shut the roof and get the correct temperature. So I think it would have helped me if it wasn't played over 3 days, but you know, he still had a good opportunity.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that just about wraps up our time for questions. I hope you've enjoyed, we've been in privileged company this evening. I hope you've enjoyed hearing the thoughts of Tim and getting an idea on the app from Alex and Mick. We hope we've whetted your appetite. And if you don't have a ticket, remember you can queue up and try and get in on the afternoon. The next best place to catch up with this year's Wimbledon is the app. If you haven't downloaded it, please do so before the championship gets started. All of us who are involved are very, very excited. It's tradition, it's prestige, it's drama, and it's desire 24/7 for 2 weeks, and it all starts on Monday the 23rd of June. Our thanks to Tim, to Alex and to Mick. Enjoy Wimbledon, please use the app, and fingers crossed, I think we can say this, fingers crossed for Andy Murray once again. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance.